Do you like monarch butterflies? Then you better watch this video, because I'm going to tell you all about the plant that is pretty much the single best flower for attracting monarchs. And it's not even a milkweed. Meet Meadow Blazing Star, also known as Liatris ligulistylis, a native flower that grows in north-central plains of North America. When it comes to attracting monarchs for nectar, no plant seems to do a better job. I first learned about this plant some years back reading how it was supposedly the best plant for attracting monarch butterflies, and I figured I wanted to give it a test drive myself. And this is back in like 2020 time frame when I first grew it from seed. But since then, I've maintained several populations at my house ever since, and I do that because I get to enjoy monarchs pretty much constantly for 2 months out of the year. From dawn till dusk, I always have a few hanging out, and it's just fun to watch. But I will teach you everything you need to know to grow and maintain this flower as well, sharing all that I've learned along the way. And that will include what it is and why you should grow it, the growing conditions and identification, seed saving and germination, dividing, wildlife and garden uses, landscaping, and then we will review. So let's take a look at this amazing plant, quite possibly the best plant for attracting monarchs to your yard. Okay, so what is Meadow Blazing Star? Well, Meadow Blazing Star is a herbaceous perennial native to Central North America. It's a member of the Liatris genus, and it has a native range covering primarily the north-central plains in Wisconsin. While many plants have been described as monarch butterfly magnets, this one is probably the only plant that is truly worthy of the title outside of milkweeds. And while milkweeds are critical for the monarch's survival as its host plant, the flowers of Meadow Blazing Star are absolutely irresistible to butterflies, and they are also important for their migration south in the winter. In one of my normal plant profiles, I would go through the pros and cons at this point, but really there's only one main reason to grow this flower, and it's to attract monarchs. Sure, there are other benefits like its long bloom time, the numerous other species of pollinators that it will attract, and there are some things to watch out for like irregular lighting and flopping, which I'll cover later. But really the only reason that people grow this thing is to bring those monarchs to their yard. Look, I've got 3 patches of this plant at my home, and in general, I have at least 3 monarch butterflies hanging around from dawn till dusk. The action is near constant at one of them. You can go to any patch and you'll find them. But one of my patches is even by the back deck, which I planted there so we could actually have monarchs flying around us while we eat lunch outside, and that's really a cool experience. Okay, and the footage you're seeing right here, this is from Blazing Star Gardens, who graciously allowed me to use it in this video. Although I have lots of great footage from my yard, it really doesn't compare to their clips of massive monarch swarms that can happen out in the Midwest. And it really shows Meadow Blazing Star's full potential for attracting monarchs. Yes, you can do this in your own yard. Down below in the notes you can find links to their clips here, as well as their website where they sell native plants and garden kits. And if you guys are enjoying this video, please click that thumbs up and share this because it is a great way to help me out, and I truly do appreciate it. Okay, so I want to divert here a little bit and examine why does it do so well in attracting monarch butterflies? Well, I can't give you a 100% definitive answer, but I will summarize my own observations as well as what I could find in research. A general observation I can make, and I'm guessing the audience would back me up in stating this, is that flowers that look purple and fuzzy, ironweed, other Liatris, Joe Pye weed, they all seem to do great at attracting butterflies, better than most other plants. But there may be another factor that draws them into this particular species. There are some researchers that have hypothesized that the nectar of Meadow Blazing Star contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And what are pyrrolizidine alkaloids? They are natural toxic compounds produced by some plants and are poisonous to many different mammals and other organisms. Now, monarchs are immune to this poison. These aren't the same poisons that are present in milkweed leaves, which are cardiac glycosides, but it is the same process. On milkweeds, baby monarch caterpillars eat the leaves, ingesting the poison, and this helps dissuade other animals from eating the caterpillars. Now, pyrrolizidine alkaloids are also used by males, being synthesized into a pheromone for courtship with females. I don't know how to determine the sex of a butterfly, but that could be the real reason that these butterflies can't seem to get enough of this flower, assuming they're all males. Okay, So, the researchers are speculating that the nectar of Meadow Blazing Star might contain the pyrrolizidine alkaloids that are used as a poison, as a defense, and as turned into a pheromone for courtship. I have not been able to find a paper that has examined this in detail yet. Yet there are other flowers that have been observed to be monarch favorites that do in fact have pyrrolizidine alkaloids in their nectar, blue mist flower being an example. So while the jury is still out on whether this is the reason for Meadow Blazing Star's attractiveness to monarch butterflies, it's an intriguing theory that seems to be true in other species. Okay, so I'm about to dive into growing conditions and identification, but before I do, I want to point out that all of this information and more is at an article at my website. I will link to it down below. Growing conditions. All right, so for growing conditions, this plant will do best in slightly moist to slightly dry conditions. It can tolerate a wide variety of soil textures, but it will need to drain. It is fairly adaptable, but in my experience, it is not drought tolerant. It does best in full sun, which is at least 6 hours per day, but it can tolerate part sun, which is at least 4 to 6 hours. But you're going to want to make sure that it gets sun from multiple directions if you can, as that will help keep it more upright and vertical. Identification. So for identification, like other members of the Liatris genus, in spring, some basal leaves will emerge from an underground corm, which will develop into a stalk. This stalk, as it grows, will be green to reddish purple in color, and it will have small white hairs. And in its optimum growing conditions, it can reach up to 5 foot tall. Spacing doesn't have to be too much though, only a foot or so is necessary. When it comes to leaves, there's going to be these basal leaves that are at the base, and these are up to 7 inches long, lanceolate to oblong elliptic in shape. As the leaves progress up the stalk though, they're going to have an alternating arrangement and will be linear in shape, and about 2 to 4 inches long by pretty narrow, like an 1/8 to 3/8 inch wide. Now for the flowers, there's going to be numerous flower heads arrayed around the circumference of the stalk. Each flower head will contain numerous tiny purple-pink flowers. The bloom duration of a mature specimen is 4 to 6 weeks, blooming top to bottom. And I'm on the border of zone 6 or 7. This usually starts around July for me. Now, the roots are fibrous in their corms, which are similar to bulbs. So I've covered that in other videos. How to save seed. So you can easily save seed from this plant. About a month after the flower is done blooming, there will be these achenes with little feathers on them where the flowers once were. So once you see where the flowers were start to turn kind of white and fuzzy or dried out, you can go get them. You simply go rub your hand along the stalk and place this seed into a paper bag for a few days in a cool, dry place to make sure that there's no surface moisture left. Keep this in the shade in the garage for at least a week or so, then transfer all the seed into a sealed container and store it in the fridge for at least a couple of years. Propagation. All right, so let's talk about ways to propagate this plant. How to grow it from seed. All right, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to grow it from seed yourself, and I'll have a link down below where you can actually buy the seed as well. But Meadow Blazing Star seed needs a cold moist stratification period of roughly 2 months. You can do this by simulating the winter in a moist paper towel in a Ziploc bag in the fridge or by winter sowing. You know, if you're watching this video in June and think, I gotta have this plant, well, you're gonna have to do the fridge thing for now or wait till this winter. My personal preference is easily just to winter sow the seed, but I'll leave cards in the top right and links to the videos on how to cold stratify in the fridge as well as winter sow down below. But for planting the seed, whether planting stratified seed or winter sowing, simply fill a suitable container with moist potting soil. Then press the seed into the surface of the soil firmly. Place this container in a location that gets morning sun and afternoon shade, and germination should happen within a month after the temperatures begin hitting, like approaching 70 Fahrenheit. And this is what the seedlings look like after germination. I know I'm going to show you how to do, like I'm showing it in a 6-pack here, but the larger 4-inch pots are generally better for growing these. The seedlings don't like to be transplanted too much. You got to be really gentle with them. So now, right now, when I grow Liatris from seed, or any species really, I generally just figure out how many plants I want and I'll sow them into 4-inch pots. That way I don't have to worry about separating seedlings. It just saves me a step later on. But I'll actually grow Liatris in their little 4-inch pots all season long, and that gives the corm lots of time to develop, and then I can plant it out that fall. Corms or mature seedlings are easy to transplant, but the small little ones like this here, it can be done, but you really need to be gentle. I'll link to a video I made a few years ago on separating seedlings that should be helpful. Dividing Liatris. So Liatris can be divided roughly every 4 to 5 years. The corms can be cut in half or a bit smaller depending on the size. And it can be done in the spring or fall, but my preference is in the spring, just after they emerge. I recently made a video going into detail on how to do this, which I will link to in the top right and down below. Also, I almost always get some volunteer seedlings every year, particularly from the patch that's in the shadier area. But I almost always let these just grow all season, and then the following spring I'll pot them up, the corms, and move them to new locations. This is what a corm that's 1 year old looks like. Now, whenever you do any transplanting of established plants like this, keep them in the shade for a few days after potting them up and give them plenty of water. Wildlife and garden uses. So when it comes to wildlife, Meadow Blazing Star is an absolute flurry of activity. And even though I've spoken about monarchs, it's popular with plenty of other species of butterflies like large swallowtails and skippers. Bees are no stranger either, so if you want to attract pollinators to your yard, this is a plant that can do it in a great way. For rabbits and deer, though, they also love this plant. I often have rabbit and deer damage, particularly rabbits. I use liquid fence, and if I didn't, I don't think I would ever have this plant survive. So take it from me, liquid fence is necessary if rabbits and deer are an issue where you live. I will leave a link to liquid fence down below. Landscaping. So for landscaping with Meadow Blazing Star, well, plant it in its growing conditions that it likes, which is full sun and soil that doesn't completely dry out. A couple of important points though. Do not fertilize this plant. Too much nitrogen will make it jump up a bit tall and possibly flop over. And when it comes to sunlight, really try to make sure the plant gets sun from many directions. When it gets irregular light, it may start growing strange and lean over. It'll still bloom and attract all those monarchs, but it won't be as nice looking. So I have 3 patches of this flower in my yard. One is on the west side of my house that gets sun from roughly 11 a.m. until late afternoon. And this gets plenty of sun and is always upright. It's coming from several directions. A second patch is on the northeast corner, and it gets sun in the morning and late afternoon. And depending on where it is at that location, it might be a nice tall plant or it might lean and flop over if it doesn't, like this one only gets sun from the east. So it grows that direction, or seems to anyways. And even though I've had to prop up plants, I'm still going to leave them here because these bring the monarchs into my back deck, which is just fun. And finally, the main patch, which I've been showing you most of the footage of, is on my little mound in the front yard. And it gets sun pretty much all day from every direction. And it's always standing tall. However, it is very prone to drought, and I have to fight to keep these plants alive. So I have to water them, give them supplemental water, and even still I lose them sometimes. So depending on the season, I may lose 3 or 4 plants to drought. So if you plant this in an area that is prone to dry spells, be prepared to give it supplemental water. Now there is one other benefit of having these patches with different light exposure though, and that is that the blooming starts on the patch on my mound and it ends with the patch behind my deck. So that kind of staggers the bloom time so that the patch that's a little shadier doesn't start blooming until a couple weeks after the earlier ones have started. It just extends the overall time. Okay, time to review. Meadow Blazing Star is a perennial flower native to North America. It grows up to 5 feet tall in full sun and medium moist soil and blooms up to 4 to 6 weeks. It is the absolute best plant for attracting monarchs to your yard and will give you ample opportunity to observe them. Try to keep the plant in the open so that it grows straight and tall, and don't let it dry out. It is relatively easy to grow from seed or from dividing corms in early spring, but be careful separating seedlings when they're really young. Okay, that's all I've got for you in this video. If you enjoyed it, really click that like button and share the video. It's a great way to help me out, and I truly do appreciate it. If you have any questions, ask in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. But all right, you guys all have a good day.